Hey folks, Michael Mann with Michael Mann Security Services. Welcome to the history and content of behavior threat detection. Hey, if you want to get a hold of us, you can get me in contact at michaelmannsecurityservice.com, or you can always get me at mman@fbctn.org. And you can call me 615-956-3912. If I don't answer, just leave me a message. I'll call you right back as soon as I am free. All right, behavior threat detection. What is it? One more time. Last week we talked about this. It is your team's ability to detect potential attack-related behavior early by working through the psychology of predatory violence from a biblical perspective. So, how do we do this? What is the content involved in this training? Well, this is where I received this, and I just put it together. So 2011, I go to Israel to train in very specific physical security principles, and this behavior threat detection stuff was included in that, and that comes from the Israeli airline security, which I'm going to go over in a minute. We also teach basic physical security principles in the BTD concept, and then of course there are some executive protection strategies. And again, here in just a second, I'm going to go over all three of these elements so you understand where the training is coming from, where the content is coming from, and how I came up with it. So, Israeli airline security, the history of this is 30 May 1972, Lod Airport, which is now Ben Gurion. Three terrorists from the Japanese Red Army are recruited by the Palestinian Front for the Liberation of Palestine, an Islamic terrorist organization. And at the time in the 70s, Israeli airline security was using profiling and not signature, not behavior based threat detection to actually stop attacks. And it was working because primarily their enemies were Arabs or they were Palestinians. If you go back to 72, all the hijackings and things that were going on, the Israeli security were stopping that by profiling because they knew their adversary. Well, the adversary got wise and they recruited some Japanese terrorists to actually get on a flight, land at Lod Airport with some weapons, and then start the attack. So they used profiling versus signature behavior. After that attack, they figured out that the profiling was not going to be effective anymore, and so they went to this behavior-based approach. And then I learned that approach again in 2011, and they got some updated training about 5 years ago from another Israeli organization. So one part of the content is the things that I learned from the Israeli airline security or from what I learned in Tel Aviv, the behavior piece of it. The second piece of the content gets into your basic physical security principles, and this is necessary to deploy this behavior threat detection. Number one is to understand what threats that we are actually trying to deter and detect. This works from the physical security assessment or from specifically from the PSA, that threat assessment. So what threats are identified? So that's what we're deploying this against. So that's active assailants, sexual predators, or any other kind of criminal activity or some sort of criminal adversary. So we go into how a PSA in your threat assessment is effective to actually doing this. Number two, we use a basic layered approach in any basic physical security principle. So the layered approach teaches your folks how to do that, how to communicate, etc. And then, of course, we implement or teach how to implement the basic functions of a physical protection system, or PPS, and that is that deterrence, detection, delay, and response function. And then when we talk about executive protection strategy, what we're talking about is teaching your teams how to be physically present without being overbearing. Their threat detection is done through observation and communication. Screening and validation is done prior to the potential adversary entering the protected space or getting close to the protected people. And the priority here is always prevention and denial through that early detection. Now, remember, with this, behavior threat detection provides your team with a biblical approach to providing effective prevention strategy, which we go over in detail when we go into the psychology of this, because that's where it started in Genesis 3 and Genesis 4. It is very time and cost effective, 3.5 hour modules. You can prove the return on investment. You learn how to engage other ministries. You provide value added services because you're doing more than security, and this reduces your overall risk. Hey, again, if you have questions and you want to know more about this, get me at contact at michaelmannsecurityservice.com or at mman@fbctn.org. Or again, you can call me at 615-956-3912. And remember, it is about prevention, not response.